We are getting very close to the 25th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights event. The lights made international news headlines, and many people thought it was a UFO incident. But what they really were, and 100% positive, they were military flares. This is known as the 10 p.m. military flare drop. I am going to show you the evidence that supports this. But realize whenever you see pictures that are similar to this that describe the Phoenix Lights, they are flares. Now, there is a second part to this event that happened around 8:30 p.m. We will also learn what this 8:30 event was all about. So first, let's watch the 10 p.m. flare drop in action. I've used Terry Proctor's video, and I've increased the speed so you can watch each of the flares be deployed. We have Terry Proctor's full video of the flare drop event that is still available on Richard Motzer's YouTube site, and I will leave the link in the description so you can watch for yourself and see the whole event unfold. So these flares were deployed by military aircraft called the A-10 Warthog. The flares are deployed from this device, and a parachute opens up and allows them to descend slowly. Now, Dr. Rudin tracked this descent in a 1997 Discovery Channel show. They used the Mike Krzyston footage for that video. He was located in an area called Moon Valley, and the video is shot in this direction. This looks like the TV tower on South Mountain, and then he picks up the full flare drop, and he also captures the flares disappearing one by one. They took a daytime film from the same location and then superimposed the flare drop video onto this. And then when you animate it, you will see one by one the flares drop behind the mountain. This is pretty much the smoking gun to show that yes, this was a flare drop. So about 4 months after the flare drop, it became public information about who actually dropped the flares. You can see here that the public affairs officer had one too many UFO calls. So she figured out that it was the Maryland Air National Guard that was visiting in Tucson, Arizona.
Our unit was flying March 13th, 1997 as part of Operation Snowbird, and we were conducting night training.
He goes on to show exactly where they dropped the flares and where that spot is relative to Phoenix, Arizona. The Discovery Channel documentary also showed a reproduction of the flare drop that was caught by local news channel 12.
Now take a close look at these pictures that we shot just last night. These are flares that the Air Force was dropping near Gila Bend.
When we saw those lights pop on in the sky, to us they looked exactly the same. The photographer and I just looked at us and goes, well, there's your lights. It looked so similar to us, it had to be the explanation.
So this is the documentary that was on the Discovery Channel called UFOs over Phoenix, and all this information was available back in 1997. So that's all the information on the Phoenix Lights military flare drop that happened at 10 p.m. Then what event happened at 8:30? This is the V-shaped UFO craft event. There is only one known video of the V-shaped craft. Again, it was taken by Terry Proctor, and you can watch the full video on Richard Motzer's YouTube channel. Now, the V-shaped craft event relies heavily on eyewitness testimony. One of the most famous witnesses would be the governor at the time, Fife Symington. Let's hear a description of the V-shaped craft that he witnessed.
March 13th, 1997. This event called Lights Over Phoenix. What did you see?
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking. Unquestionably, it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
Right. Doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, and a pilot. Got a lot of hours flying. So it was pretty breathtaking.
Now that sounds pretty crazy. Let's hear from another famous witness, Kurt Russell, who was actually in an airplane at the time landing at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport.
So I said, yeah, and on the show they talked about 20,000 people reporting it and only one general aviation pilot. And I said, that's me. Right, so the weirdest part of that to me, though, was I'd never thought about it from the time I landed until I saw that TV show. And when I saw Oliver the next day, he hadn't either.
Really?
I thought that was kind of bizarre.
That's when you know you have an interesting life, when you go like, yeah, UFO.
Exactly. So that's a weird reaction from Kurt and his son, who were both in the air and saw this V-shaped craft, but they really didn't think much of it. I'll have links to both of these interviews and a couple more down in the description. So what the heck is this thing? Let's take a closer look. Some witnesses describe this as a single solid object that would block out the stars. Let's go ahead and use the Terry Proctor video to debunk that idea. As you can see here, we have two different shapes of this object within 28 seconds of each other. If this was a single craft, then you wouldn't get a picture that shows this type of deformation of the lights. So just after 28 seconds, you see this kind of deformation, which suggests that each one of these lights is an independent object. When looking at the NUFORC database of eyewitness reports, many of the eyewitnesses support this same conclusion, such as these were individual craft flying in a distinct formation, or looked like a formation of planes with their landing lights on. Let's take a quick look at this specific eyewitness report where an airline pilot was driving to work during the 8:30 p.m. event and watched it for 10 minutes. The lights first appeared to me to be over the airport in a wide formation and traveling in a southerly direction, roughly over the interstate. I pulled off the interstate to watch them go overhead. Where my account seems to differ from the accounts of other witnesses is that I perceived the lights to be individual objects, 5 in all, traveling in a roughly triangular formation. As they passed overhead, I took note of a particularly bright star and noted that the star was never obscured by any solid object as the lights passed it. While these lights were indeed strange, there is no doubt in my mind that they were individual objects and not the running lights on some large object. The Terry Proctor video also supports this conclusion. As you can see, if these were running lights of a single object, they would stay fixed and they would not distort like this video clip. Other people have traced the lights in the Terry Proctor video, and they've come to the same conclusion, that these are individual lights that change shape over time. So then, what was flying over Phoenix at 8:30 p.m.? An article from Reader's Digest, May 1998, has the exact answer. If these witness statements are true, then we have the smoking gun to the V-shaped craft event at 8:30. The crew of an America West Airlines flight radioed to the Air Traffic Control Center in Albuquerque. It was a formation of CT-144 Tudors that were flying at 19,000 feet. Someone claiming to be a pilot in the formation radioed the America West co-pilot and said, "We're Canadian Snowbirds flying Tudors." Now, of course, the Canadian Snowbirds are going to deny any involvement, saying we don't travel in V-shaped formations and we don't cruise with landing lights on. I mean, it would be terrible PR for them. They're in foreign airspace and caught in the middle of an international UFO incident. So what evidence do we have that supports the idea that this was a formation of CT-144 airplanes? So that brings us to eyewitness Mitch Stanley. He had his swiveling, moving telescope ready that night to view the Hale-Bopp comet. His story ran in the Phoenix New-Times on June 26, 1997. Through that telescope, Mitch saw that they were planes. He said what looked like individual lights to the naked eye actually split into two under the resolving power of the telescope. The lights were located on the underside of squarish wings. Mitch's story also ran in the Arizona Republic newspaper. He said, again, they were planes. He could see they had square wings. And this article says 3 lights. He said 1 on each wing and 1 underneath the fuselage. So as you can see here, these planes have a big headlight in front. You can also notice the squared off wings. And here you can see the 2 white light configuration on the wings and the single headlight on the fuselage. But stunt pilots or fighter pilots wouldn't think of flying in a formation to act like a UFO.
So we would go out at night flying around on goggles and you'd see a campfire. And you go, oh, UFO time. And then you get the airplane going about 600 knots. And then you pull the power back to idle so you can't hear it. And you get zinging towards the fire. Well, you turn the lights are all down because we're in restricted areas, so we can do that. And there's lights on it that you can only see if you're on night vision goggles. So the other airplanes can see us, but no one else can see us. Then you go zinging at it. And then right when you get to the campfire, you pull the airplane into the vertical, you stroke the afterburners, you let them light off, you count to 3, you pull them off, and then you just go away. Instant UFO reporting.
We may never know who actually flew over Phoenix that night, but in terms of witness testimony, this document is 35 pages and goes into excruciating detail about witness testimony that night. It analyzes 128 different witness testimonies from these different sources. This map shows the location of the different witness reports. You can see the flight path that the formation of planes flew that night. And here you can see the approximate timing of the eyewitness reports. A formation of planes flying over Phoenix would be interesting, but when you add on top of that this major military flare drop where plenty of video footage was taken, you can see how it snowballed into this major international news UFO event. And Tony Ortega was still writing Phoenix Lights articles 20 years later. It's still the same set of planes and flares over Arizona. So here we are almost 25 years later, and it's still the same set of planes and flares over Arizona. Thanks for watching.